Welcome everyone to this Cradle conversation. My name is Laura Halpin and I am recording from my home in Walnut Creek, California, which is on the land that was originally cared for and stolen from the Bay Miwoks, specifically the Saklan tribe. And I would like to welcome you to this Cradle conversation, which these Cradle conversations were created to provide a container for us all as we're moving through unstable times, and to also help bring some illumination to the ways that we can move forward in good ways. And the way that I invite people in has to do with my desire to bring people into conversation who have a steady way of showing up in the world, and even their presence is steadying. And I wanted to bring wisdom into our community so that we have way showers, an example of how to navigate. So with that, I want to welcome my guest, JENJII HYSTEN, and I want to say hello and have you on the screen.
Hello. Hi.
Hi, welcome. You're looking
Thank you,
beautiful
Laura.
today in that gorgeous yellow.
Oh, thank you. Just needed some sunshine today. Be your own sunshine.
So I want to share a little bit of your really impressive bio. So we're grounded in who you are. I met you through Julie Neal of the Mother's Quest podcast, an event that she was co-hosting. And so first and foremost, I know you as just a gracious human being and as a mother. And one of the things that I really loved about your bio is that you end with that your life mission is to create transformative experiences for individuals, families, communities, and the world. And that is rooted in your desire to leave the world just a little bit better than when you found it. And I can say that you're knocking that out of the park as a mission.
Thank you.
So you are the founder and CEO of Blaze Consulting Group, which was formerly the Hysten Consulting Group. You're an advocate, teacher, student facilitator, and a voice for the voiceless with over 25 years of experience in the education and human services arena. You have served as the executive director of Saving Our Sisters, Saving Ourselves, which is a safe place for girls to explore themselves and life issues. You've been the dean of students at a charter school, I don't know if you still are, where you were responsible for designing and supervising a care management program to support the holistic needs of the whole child. I love that you've been ordained as a minister and have been recognized as a community pastor, because I just feel you're such a deep connection to the communities that you're a part of and are serving. You've been certified as a life coach. And one of the things that I really appreciated was your ability to work at the organizational level to create solutions that seem very personal and intimate. And one of the things that I wanted to ask you about is your ability to use metaphors and storytelling. And this is a little bit tricky, to connect program challenges to theoretical frameworks. And so can we start there? Because that's a sentence that I don't totally understand, that metaphor and storytelling to connect program challenges to theoretical frameworks.
Yeah. Well, Laura, first I want to say thanks for having me, and it's really humbling. And usually when people read my bio, I'm like, oh, who is that they're talking about? Because for me, it's really just about the hard work and serving people. And so when you ask that question, one of the things about the work that I do, or just a lot of people call me and they say, Genji, just do what you do. And so in that, whenever I have to do work that has to do with framework and theory or hard conversations, Franklin, my business partner and husband, we specialize in hard, intense conversations. One of the things we have found that is also cultural to us as African American and some indigenous cultures is that storytelling can actually help people understand complex things very simple. And so you'll even see, the parables, and just in different religions, you'll see people will use storytelling and metaphors as a way to kind of really grab people. And so when I think about ways that I do that, excuse me, I actually was just reading a book I have to teach this week, or talk a little bit about in regards to anti-racism. And the gentleman opened up storytelling. He opened up basically telling the male version of my life story. And as I read that, I was like, this is why storytelling is so important, because sometimes storytelling can quickly cut through race, age, gender, economical status, geographical location. One of the things in the work I do, and my husband, I believe, is that I feel like as a coach, as a trainer, as a designer, just as a human, one of my life missions is to be able to learn how to connect to the human spirit beyond all the things that we identify as. And that's because as an African American woman, in the fields I go into, there's usually only me in the room. And in that, I've had to learn how to connect to people and actually disarm their defenses by connection. And so one of the things you'll also learn in psychology and things like that is one of the ways you connect with people is you start telling stories, or you open up space for them to express who they are. And so, yeah, it's one of the ways we take very complex, intense topics and make them palatable. Yeah.
Before we start with the Cradle conversations, I also wanted just to reflect back that when I read your bio, it just seemed like in every arena that you've been looking at, it's almost like you're always working at the organizational or systemic level. And I'm wondering, was that your education, or because I think that's a really unique skill.
Right.
It's one that I don't necessarily have. So I just wanted you to talk about that, if you would.
That's really great. And I was reflecting on this week. Is that my education? I did go to UC Berkeley later in my 20s. And while I was grateful for that, it was actually not UC Berkeley that taught me those things. So life experience. I grew up in Southern California. I grew up with a single mother who was trying her best. Pretty poor. Before college, I went to 10 different schools. And so in that, I had to adapt very quickly and learn different ways of being in different parts of the world, from the hood to the inner city to the suburbs and then I had to become what was needed to be safe in those places. And study. I've always been a student of life. I am intrigued by human behavior and the way we are in the world. I have a very strong faith in God, and so I'm also intrigued by the meeting of a higher power and then us as humans and nature in itself. And so in that, growing up and playing sports throughout high school and college, in some ways life trained me to be able to figure out how to create systems and patterns, one, to pull myself out of poverty, and not just me, but generations that come after me. And then two, to get into rooms and places that I never should have been based on where I came from or my lack thereof education until I got an education. And so because of those things, I began to study humans, study systems. And it was outside of the classroom that I actually studied the most. So by the time I finally got to school at Berkeley for undergrad, after different schools, it was kind of more refining and helping me understand research principles and access to, I think the difference that set me apart coming from where I came from than a lot of people with privilege was they already knew how to access resources, how to find information. I didn't know that. I was collecting information. And so when I got to Berkeley, it actually opened up the world of, oh, you have all these great ideas and thoughts and theories and hypotheses, and this is how you begin to prove them or show them or put them in a way that others can understand. And so it is probably less my academic training and more of what I would consider my life hustle that has taught me how to quickly shift and create and design. Yeah.
So it sounds like it came from surviving, you know, keeping yourself safe.
Yeah, you know, I have people I grew up with, they say, Genji, how did you make it? Like, how did you? And I said, there was no option. I just kept going. And I made a lot of mistakes along the way until I found the right ways. And so in making mistakes, sometimes you learn how to create the right paths and travel the right paths. Yeah. Interesting question.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. You helped me think about something in a whole new way.
So these Cradle conversations have 5 questions. And so I'm going to ask you the first one, and that is, what cradles you?
What cradles me? I've been thinking of that. I first have to say, God, growing up the way I grew up, I went through a lot of different stuff, and I've always just had a spiritual connection. Before I actually, chose Christianity, it was just, I always knew there was something bigger. I think that's how I survived the trauma, and not only survived, but came out healed, which a lot of people don't, was able to work through it. But I think currently as well, the add-on to that has to be my husband first. I have an extraordinary husband who wants to see me win in every area. And he's my life partner. We are in ministry together. We do so much together. And so, people marry all kind of people for different reasons. And I feel like he and I married for all the right reasons. And so he really cradles me. And then I am blessed to still have my mother around. She lives in our in-law, and she cradles me still. Sometimes I have to be like, I'm good. But because she is the thread in my life, that is the oldest thread, she has the story to where I came from to get to where I'm at. And it's her story as well. And so she often knows, I don't understand this, what's going on, but you got this. And sometimes she just says the one thing I need to hear. Or, the other day I was sick and she comes and brings me, she pampers me for a minute. And so when I was a younger adult, I probably would have been irritated by that. But at 44, I counted a blessing. And then the third is I have 2 sons, 9 and 11. And I can't even express what they have done for me. They made me better. And what I mean by that is before I had them, I kind of knew what I wanted to do in life. I could feel it. I couldn't quite identify it or articulate it, but I could feel the calling and mission of my life. But when Isaac and William came, everything came into focus. It all made sense. And thinking beyond me and their generation is actually what really inspires me to continue to do whatever I need to do to just help transform my life. And so those are the 3 things quickly that cradle me. Of course, friends and community, but those 3 things, they help keep me focused. And then when I fall apart, they all put me back together again.
It's what a gift to have peace and support in your most intimate relationships.
Oh, it's a blessing. It is.
And to be seen by your mother, that she's been such a steady presence in your life, I think is is something not everyone has. And so I'm so
Yeah.
thankful that you have.
And, to heal with my mother. So a lot of the stuff I went through in life was with my mother, trying to figure out life. I didn't understand it as a child, but as a woman and a mother, I do. And so we've been able to heal together.
Mm-hmm.
And she's been able to help me not harm myself and my husband and my children by just reminding me of some of the things that she could have done different. It's, yeah.
Wow.
I'm gonna stop because I could cry, because a lot of us as women don't get that opportunity. We get the opportunity to hurt with our parents, our mothers, and then to talk about it. But some of us don't get the opportunity to then heal with them. And so that cradles me.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
Thank you. So the second question is, in what ways do you rock the cradle? And that was when the race uprising started. I had not had this question as part of the conversation. And so I felt like the conversation was rooted in, how do we find comfort? And this question, it felt like I needed a question about, how do we move, how do we get uncomfortable? How do we break up the containers that no longer hold us well for service? And so that's where that question came from. So in what ways, JENJII, do you rock the cradle?
That's a really good question. So a story comes to mind. This is the storytelling. When I was in junior college, I played 2 sports. And one of the young women on my softball team, I've always been a person to kind of speak to power, even at times in my ignorance, and I just didn't know what I was saying, like as a younger person. And one day she gave me, this would be really small to some people, but because I collect words and memories and quotes and stories, she wrote on the back of this picture, "JENJII, you have a lot of passion. But remember that passion burns like fire. And if you don't guide it, it will burn like a wildfire." And I remembered that so, and then I went on a mission to understand that. And so as I understand that, and it comes to now, is that one of the ways that I rock the cradle is I use my voice. I have always, had some type of courage. I don't even know if it's courage, but just something within me that pushes me to speak up against injustice, that, to support, to see things. My husband says, not everyone thinks like you. And I'm like, I don't need everyone to think like me, but let's just care. And so in that, I have now learned to refine that passion and harness it and control it for the right moments. And so I rock the cradle, I use my voice. And thank God people allow me into spaces to use my voice. And so I am often the one that will ask the question that no one else asks. And that also, I think, comes from the way I grew up. There was so much I didn't know that when I got to UC Berkeley, I would ask questions sometimes that I thought were very ignorant, or very uneducated because of the institution I was in. And I had one teacher tell me, he said, just remember, the one time you ask that question, you'll never have to ask it again, because then you'll know it. And so I'll ask the question. I will design and redesign around structures. Currently, I rock the cradle by dismantling structures and systems, a way of thinking, and trying to figure out how to recreate them to make them better. I rock the cradle by, I'm a Christian. I am a preacher. Some people call me pastor. And currently, I rock the cradle by being honest about Christianity in America for Black folks and people of color, and really trying to understand what that was like for oppression and faith. And so in that space, sometimes it's not as comfortable, but I feel like part of my call in life is that when I know deep within my spirit that something needs to happen, I believe that if I am then in that space, I may be that one person that opens the door. I don't have to go in the door, but I may be the one courageous enough to open the door so that people can go ahead. Yeah.
I recently started reading the book Women Who Run with the Wolves. I'm not sure if you've ever read it.
I haven't.
But the author, Clarissa Pinkola Estes, talks about the importance of a question as a portal. The questions get to a place that answers don't. And so I just wanted to say that your role as a question asker can be the thing that breaks through to, beyond what we know. And,
And I have found that asking the question, the right question, and this is part of being a coach, a life, a professional coach as well, but even in organizations and whatever system, even with young people and kids, the right question for the right person or the right moment can usher in transformation. And I have seen that on a macro level and a micro level and a very personal level. And so that's great you brought that up, because that is, I think, when I train coaches, one of the things that makes coaching so dynamic, if people use the art of coaching correctly, is the right question. We're always seeking the right question, not to serve me, but to be of service to the person I am in front of, or the system I'm in front of.
Yeah. The person, was she a teammate or a coach that talked to you?
She was a teammate. She was a teammate, but she was older. I was probably like 20 and wild and out there. That's a whole nother podcast. And she was probably about 24. So she was much older. She had her own apartment and we were just wilding out. And, I've been blessed that along the way, I call them little angels. People just saw something or said something, and I heard it and put it in, I call my filing cabinet for when I needed it. And I don't even know where she is now. I never saw her after that semester. And that one question is transformative.
Wow. And I just think about how our strengths, when they are not tempered with wisdom, become the thing that undoes us. And so just that she dropped that pearl in, that you had the wherewithal to hold on to, I think is really, she was definitely used in your life.
She was. And I tested that hypothesis a lot of times until I proved it right. So
she was right.
I got it now, but my 20s the fields got burnt.
Okay, so the third question is, do you have a cradle to offer us? So really anything that can help us contain ourselves as we move through this time.
There's like the professionally deep thought one, and then there's the real from. I think I'm going to answer this question more from the place of mother right now and anchor of the family. And so, do I have a cradle to offer? One, in this season, I know that we first have to hold ourselves, literally and figuratively, that we are coming out of and going into a very intense season unlike no other. I tell a lot of my clients, look, we've never wrote this book before on how to live in a pandemic and a revolution at the same time. And so one, we literally have to hold ourselves. Like some days, and I realize this, as women, we move so much, sometimes we don't even get touched, even if we're married or ourselves, but just literally anchor ourselves, our necks, things like that, that even just when you do that, you could feel energy move through your body. And so things like that shift us. This is really, really basic, but every night now I do a full face routine and I brush my hair. And I never did that before COVID. And I said, what? And I remember watching my grandmothers and great grandmothers do that.
Mm.
And now at 44, I understand it was the process of releasing the day, of nurturing yourself, of brushing away the things you want to let go of, and centering yourself. And sometimes I'll sing or I'll pray in that moment, or listen to music. Me and Luther Vandross, we got really close again. And as that goes, it moves away. And so that is the literal and figurative way of holding ourselves. And that may look different for all of us, but we need some practices. We need to, the word self-care is overused. That's why I want to just say, hold yourself. And so whatever that means for you, we have to embed it into our daily life, or else we as women, it's intense. Every woman I know right now, from the strongest woman who I never see break to the one I'm always holding together, are all going through a range of emotions as no other time in their life. And so one is hold yourself. Two is, I tell a lot of people this, be kind to yourself. I even tell my clients this, we're going to make a lot of mistakes in these next couple seasons of our lives because there is no book. We're writing it. We can read all of these different great books and try to pull together our own framework, but we are building the framework from scratch. And so in that, we've got to be kind to ourselves. We've got to let ourselves fail sometime and be okay with that. We've got to know today, I'm not showing up as my best, but I'm here. Or I can't be here today. And then as women especially, we've got to release the internal critic. The talk that says you should be able to do this and this and this. What happened? You used to be da-da-da. Well, that was before you were homeschooling 3 kids and running a business. Or that was before you couldn't go take care of yourself like you used to and then come home and deal with your spouse or your family members. And so the second, I would say, be kind to yourself. Really be kind to yourself. And then I think another part, I often speak in like 3, 5, or 7 points. So another part would be to find your tribe. Find your tribe in this season. The whole thing around social distancing pushed us into social isolation, but we weren't created to isolate. Maybe for some of us who are introverts, but it's still not full isolation. And so in this season, find a tribe. Find someone you could check in when they could check in with you. You may not, with my children, we're about to, move together in pods or kind of tribes. I wasn't super close with these parents prior to this, but when I run into a mom in the right age, she clearly is as desperate as I am desperate. And so in this season, we're going to try to become a tribe. Why? Because in my culture, in the African-American culture, and many other cultures, we cannot do this alone. We're stronger together, right? One thing you could get knocked off, but if there's a group and you put it together, the force is unmovable. And so find your tribe. And you don't have to check in with them every day. You don't have to be with them every day. But you do have to be there at some point and let them be there for you. Let them be there for you and your children and your spouse and your business. It's not a sign of weakness. As women, especially I feel as a Black woman, I've been taught to not show my weakness. This is why I think our consulting company does so well, is because we show up in the room perfect. That's what people hire me to do. They hire me to show up and just handle it. And while we've been conditioned to be that way, that is not sustainable today, nor should it be the criteria anymore for us being strong women, or being powerful women, or being shakers and mover, is that I always show up with my stuff together. I have actually found recently that actually when I show up with my vulnerability, it actually is much more powerful than my perfection.
Oh, I think that is, without a doubt, it's the authenticity, it's that we really do, we connect in our imperfection, not our perfection, you know, and I think that we've
Right.
practiced it backward. And I think, you know, as you're talking, I'm just thinking about, I think that COVID has really revealed in insidious and positive ways that we can't get through this alone, you know, that we are completely interdependent, even though our culture tells us that we've done it all on our own, you know.
Right. Right.
And so I appreciate all of these. I love the image of you brushing your hair, knowing that your grandma did it too.
Yeah.
You know, like how beautiful is that, that she's showing up in you as a, you know, almost like she's guiding you, like, this is how you do it, honey.
Yeah. You know, I have found in this season, I've been really leaning on the stories and the images of the elders and the youth. But the elders, because I say, how did they make it through such hard times? The Great Depression, you know, all these different things, civil rights movement, Jim Crow, I mean, just the Holocaust, like how? And I find myself studying the memory now and the stories of them now from a different perspective, not as the grandchild, but as a student. And those things, my grandmother just passed away in October. She was 93. And the joy she had, and I said, how do you get that? And so I find myself being a student of those stories, and trying to extract from them the ways that we today can survive and thrive, in conjunction with the resiliency of children. Yeah.
That feels, just as you're saying it, that feels so cradling, you know, having people's examples and stories. And I remember when we were on the phone earlier, you were talking about the passing of Congressman John Lewis, and the realization that as our elders pass on, that we become the elders.
Right. Yeah. We, when Congressman John Lewis passed, it was very emotional. And I was at my office, you know, the day that the New York Times released his letter and his op-ed, and to us, to the living, literally. And I scrolled down, I was like, I don't have time to read this because I'm building a workshop literally for the next day for like 40 young African-American Latinos in San Francisco who organize and work with people, you know, people in prison and in recovery. They are doing the work. They are the protesters, all this. And so I happened to push the button, and a gentleman was reading his letter. And when I tell you, Laura, it hit me into my soul. If anyone hasn't read it or heard it, you should hear it. And at the end, he says, to this generation, Emmett Till was my George Floyd. And then another part, he says, let the wind be at your back. He talks about having to go to the Black Lives Matter sign in DC. And I said, this man in his last moment thought of us, thought of my children. And so the workshop I was doing the next day, I quickly redesigned it. And I called it, Who Are You in This Season? And I had them stop and I said, we're gonna listen to this. And there was a 70-year-old all the way to a 21-year-old range. And that was it. It was the transformative moment. He mastered storytelling. He historically went back and told who he was. He told about the moment, but then he told so much about what he knew was going to happen, because what he saw, like the momentum, the energy, you know, like from where he came from to where he was leaving in this world, Earth, he saw so much. And so that was another moment where I said, this is how we will connect the stories and the courage and tenacity of those who have survived some things with those who are just now experiencing it. And it was transformative. And that's my job. I'm not always the expert in the rooms that I'm in, but my role is to find the right voice, the right framework, the right context, to let God move through me, the right moment that opens up for people. And that's what John Lewis did for me. And, you know, my husband has done it on another training, and it does the same thing every time, because it is, when you talk about what cradles us in our country right now, it is someone like John Lewis's voice leaving us with a 5-minute, you know, piece around why he still has hope on his deathbed.
Right. So who am I to not have hope?
Who,
if
right.
This lifetime with hope.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
You are, the word that's coming to me is open, you know, that you are open to those messages coming through, you know, whether it be from your 24-year-old teammate, you know, your ability to receive wisdom and pass it on is beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm open. That's a great way to put it.
So do you have, this is question number 4, do you have something to offer this community as we become more skilled at rocking the cradle? And I really mean this as rocking the cradle, disrupting white supremacy culture and anti-Blackness.
Good. Do I have something to offer the community? And when I think of the community, I'm trying to think of who the community is. And so, what do I have to offer? For like hours I could talk, but
this is your profession, right?
Okay, here's what I have to. Okay, I'm gonna try to take a few different positions on this. One is, and some people may not agree with me on this, but I think this is what I've been studying and watching people. I've been doing like these intense trainings since March, right? And we've been doing this work longer. I need white people to understand that right now, this is the first time ever in history that I know of that Blacks have been allowed and supported or given space to publicly mourn and be angry without the thought of retaliation. And what I mean by that is, as I watch Black people in white organizations, white led, or just the people I know, like just in so many different settings. And when I do this, I'm literally going through like all the rooms I would go into. Is what I see is that the doors have been opened to say, it's okay for you to cry, Black man. It's okay for you to be mad, and I'm not gonna be afraid of you right now. Or Black mother, it's okay for you to be scared for your 9-year-old Black son. Or like all these things, we don't say, it doesn't get said, but now people are like, say it, or it's here. So here's the thing. This is not new for us as Black folks. We have learned to live under these circumstances for 400 or so years. It is now learned behavior. It is as much of who we are as it is white supremacy. And so in that, while people are coming into an awakening of what we've been living for 400 years, I offer to people to remember that when dealing with Black folks in this season, we can't be approached as if this is new. It's new to everyone else. It's not new to us. And while people are hyper speeding to breaking down systems and anti-racism, anti-Blackness, and people don't even really understand the term, like all this, but while people are fast forwarding through it, I want to offer to people, slow down. Like, you can't speed through undoing a system that has been embedded for over 400 years. Let's take time to really have the conversations, to really look at our practices, to sit in them, to give Black folks the time to, you know, some of us are waiting to see when the rug is going to get pulled out from under us. Like, when is this not going to be a fad anymore? Or when do people decide now we're tired of it, right? And so what I was telling some of my friends is that it's actually gone longer than some of us have experienced around people being like, we're really going to change the systems. And because I'm in organizations and our company is literally now hired to redo their structures, I see people putting dollars where their mouth is now, which shows me there is possible change. But be patient with us as we will be patient with you. And know that we are going through mourning and anger and acceptance all over again. Still not quite trusting that systematic change will happen. I have 2 boys, right? My boys are 11. My oldest kid, he looks like a grown man already. I want to trust this. I want to believe this will happen, but I will raise him to know what to do just in case it doesn't. I don't want to raise him that way, but as a mother, I have to until the hypothesis becomes a theory, or there's now quantitative data that we can actually say we can bank on, right? And so that's what I want to offer. And so I have a lot of friends that are not Black, who are white and Asian and Latino, and I know their hearts. And there are some people that this is head work. This is what I want to tell trainers specifically, facilitators, educators. Some people are doing the head work, but this is actually hard work.
Right.
I can come in and rewrite your systems and policies and procedures all day, right? We're all born with some type of bias. That's why we have policies and procedures in place to help us through that. But what we actually are seeing as an undertaking in our country right now is the hard work. And that's why it's so emotional. Back to that passion we talked about earlier, it's burning like a wildfire because some people don't know what to do with the anger and hate, and some people don't know what to do with the possible hope and change. And so it's hard work. Yeah. I hope that, you know, there's so many other things, but when I think of where I'm thinking of right now in my work and as a mother and as a wife of a Black man, that's it. I would like to tell my white allies, please make sure no one pulls the rug out from under us.
I think about, it would be the equivalent of saying that you were, no, this is not the equivalent, but this is an analogy of, you know, being raised in a dysfunctional family, and everyone in the family reads the book about the dysfunction, and then it's like, we're good to go. You know, there's like, there's the understanding, the cognitive understanding of it. And then there's the emotional experience, the trauma, the unlearning that has to happen, that is in the body, in the heart. And you know, I think I've heard so many Black folks say this, you know, the same thing that you just expressed about, we'll believe it when we see it, don't pull the rug out, you know, and it's painful to hear, and yet at the same time, there's no reason for you to believe it until there's too much at stake. You know, you have to teach your son to survive the system as it is right now, you know. And that is, it's painful to hear, but it's not the same as living it. And,
you know, there is, when we think about, you know, when African Americans were enslaved in this country, or Africans and the Underground Railroad, and we think about abolitionists, we need real abolitionists right now again, which are not the ones that study the rhetoric. When I went to Berkeley, it was really confusing. I had to take a class on rhetoric. It made no I was like, well, we're not doing anything. Exactly. It's rhetoric. But what we're saying now is we actually need movers and shakers. We need abolitionists, railroad. We need people to actually go in and dismantle the system. I was on a, maybe I shouldn't say that because they may see it. But I clearly have some people tell me, as a white person, I can walk in a room and do this, and you or this other person couldn't. I said, that's so I go get the money so that it could go to this community. Oh, that's great. But my thing is actually bring that young Black person in the room with you and pull the chair out and show them how to be in that room and make every person at that table uncomfortable by the fact that you are bringing this person with you. And if they want you in the room, then they've got to let them in the room too. That's the difference between the rhetoric and the actual creating the pathway to transformation. We don't need change. Change doesn't work. It has not worked. Change, this is why I say transformation, not change. I believe change, you can always go back to the start. But when you transform something, if this is a bridge I'm holding in front of me, then I'm saying transformation is if your starting point is here, and this is the other side of the bridge, by the time you get here, I want the bridge to be exploded. There's no going back to that, to that starting point. And so that's what we need. We need people to speak to power and not be afraid. I have heard of many times lately where people are on calls and Zoom calls and things are said that are racist and not one white person in that space speaks up. I say something. And that's why, but that is also in some ways not the nature upon which people were raised that are white heritage in this country. And so we're all undoing some of these systems that are within us, right? That are within us in order to create this new world. Do I believe it could be done? I do, or I wouldn't be putting my life on the line for it. But I believe that it will come with a lot of tension, not violence, but tension and truth.
I really appreciate you naming the difference between change and transformation. Change, you can go back. Transformation, the bridge is gone. That's something that I will take with me.
That's how we look at it in our work. The bridge is gone. You got to build a new one now.
I love that. The fifth question is, do you have a blessing or a vision or a hope for the collective?
Do I have a blessing, a vision, or a hope for the collective?
I know you do, because this is your work, right?
Blessing, vision, and hope. Okay, so let me start with my vision, hope, and then end with blessing. My vision deeply personal, is that when my children are 44 like me and they write this book that I said no one has written yet, that at the end of it, it could say, well done, that we did it. We as a country, as a community, as families, as individuals, that we blew the bridge up and we created new ones. My vision is that my children will be able to write those books. And when they tell my grandchildren the stories, they'll only be historical remembrance and not present day reality. Yeah, we loved each other more. So that's my vision, my hope. So many different. My hope just for this season right now. I can't even go a year or two down the road on my hope, because right now hope is a verb for me. It's an everyday verb. And my hope in this season right now is that we don't forget to take care of our children, whether they're your biological children or not, because I feel like we are so concerned about the adult problems, the political stuff, the educational system, that we are missing the social emotional distress or stress in our young people. And so my hope is that today we see them wherever they show up in our lives. You know, you go to the store and a little baby will wave to you in the stroller. You're like, oh my gosh, wave back. Like, my hope is that we see them. And then my blessing, and this is, you know, as a minister, as a prayer warrior, this is one, it's hard. My blessing, and I don't know if it's a blessing, that's really, and I'm hesitant on that because offering a blessing is usually very specific to the person you're offering it to. But the blessing I want to offer to this community, thank you, is our grandmothers made it, and we will too. It's not even my current day blessing. It is the blessings that we are standing on. Many of us are standing on our own work, but we are standing on the women. And I just keep feeling drawn to talk about women specifically. If there are men watching, you were birthed through women, so maybe you can really find the root in this. But to stand on the blessing of those that have come before us as women, whether they had it all together or not, something they did got us to where we are. Somebody prayed for us. Somebody sacrificed for us. Somebody fled a country for us. Somebody didn't jump off the boat coming from Africa so that I could be here today. Somebody decided they weren't going to be a slave master and became an abolitionist. Like, there are so many stories of how women got us through the hardest times in our countries and families. And so the blessing upon us as women is that we now are those women. We are those women for the youngins looking towards us. And we have to embrace that, and we have to put that on like a cloak of honor and carry that blessing forward. Because if we don't, like our ancestors, had they chose not to, then I don't know what will come out of this all. It's a lot of men that could do a lot of work, but women, we do transformation on a deeper level. And so that is my blessing, is that we take the wisdom of the elders and now we accept being the elders for those of us who, yeah.
Thank you. I'm also thinking of just the non-binary folks who I think from their vantage point have such an ability to scrutinize and read the room like you have been able to as well, you know, because of their need to survive a system that isn't built for them. Right. So I just wanted to scoop.
And that's good, because I want to say that we can extract from everywhere whoever we are. And so for me, because of who I am, that's what I call it and say. But whoever you are and the truth that you are sitting in, there is wisdom and power to anchor into, as well as responsibility to move things forward.
Thank you.
Thank you, Laura.
I really appreciate just the vulnerability of how you showed up in this conversation today, and it just feels very powerful to me. And I'm really grateful for your time and your wisdom and the way that you've shared your experiences with us. I feel like they're so real, and it's clear that you're a teacher, because I feel that very specific instruction coming from you through your stories. And so before we end, I just want to call everyone close who has been a part of this conversation, and I want to invite those of you who have participated across space and time to anchor in to the messages and the wisdom that JENJII has shared with us, and to allow it to transform you, and to really take forward this the image of the bridge being blown up. You know, that there really isn't a going back to anything. There's only moving forward. And so that feels like such a pearl to me. And so, JENJII, I just want to thank you so much for you.
Bless you, Laura.
Yeah.
I want to thank you for creating this platform and rising to the occasion and creating the space. And these questions are the questions we need in this season. And so thank you for having me. And I want to, offer you a blessing that this goes further and further, and that you reach more communities, because your heart feels so genuine. And that's what we need in this season. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. And for after, when I share this, I'll be sharing links for people to find you and your work. Okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, thank you so much.
Thank you. You be blessed.
Okay, you too.